All right, let's jump back into the lab and take a look at vNIC and vNIC template creation, because seeing it in action is one way to help solidify the concepts in our minds, and as well as to make sure that we understand this process from end to end. Let's dive in. We're going to create a vNIC on a service profile, so let's switch over to the Servers tab, grab one of our service profiles, tester 2 works, and we're going to come down to vNICs down here. Now we see we already have a couple of vNICs configured, but let's just click the Add button and see what our options are for adding them. So we can give this a name. Let's just call this Ethernet 2. We already have Ethernets 0 and 1, so we'll just continue the sequence there. And the first option we have is this MAC address assignment. Now we can use the drop down to here, select a manual MAC address if we so chose, and it gives us the option to do that. Or we could select the hardware default. If we're not using a vNIC and it has a burned in MAC address, we can take what it provides. Or we can choose a MAC address pool like one of the ones we created earlier. So in our case, let's take CBT A. We'll assume this is part of Fabric A. So we make sure that Fabric A is selected, and then we could enable failover here if we were to choose to do so. Now down here, we pick the VLANs. Again, these are checkboxes. I can check as many VLANs as I want. Each one of these is adding the VLANs into the virtual Ethernet interface configuration. And I can select one of these to be the native VLAN. I could pick the finance VLAN to be the native VLAN in this case. Now as I continue to scroll down here, I see some of the other options. For example, I can change the MTU like I said. I might want to make this 9216. The pin group we could set here if we wanted to. I did not create one earlier as part of any kind of demo, so we don't have one here, but this is where we would set it. And then down here, we can see some of the other policies that we might add. We'll be talking about QoS policies in a future video, but for now, we can just take a pre-configured policy. The network control policy, we could create a network control policy here, and this is where we can see that I can set the CDP to be enabled or disabled. If I scroll down a little bit, I can see that LLDP, from a transmit and receive perspective, I can enable or disable those individually. And so these are where I can apply all of my policies to the vNIC. But again, once I'm done here, it's just going to add another vNIC to the list. Oh, and I just realized that 9216, the downstream interfaces have to be configured for 9000. The network is configured for 9216. So that's my fault there. So either way, an MTU would be 9000 on a vNIC. We hit OK. And now we see that we've added Ethernet 2 to the list. Now it's in bold because we haven't actually saved the changes yet. I can come down here and click Save Changes. It'll give me all kinds of warnings about the fact that it might cause traffic disruption because we're actually installing a brand new NIC into a service profile. But fortunately, the service profile isn't actually placed onto any kind of hardware at this time. So that's well and good, but what about vNIC templates? Well, these are going to be located in a slightly different place. We come over to the LAN tab first, and we create the vNIC template, which is down here. So vNIC template, we can right click and say create vNIC template. We could create, let's just call it template A, which indicates that we are going to have this on Fabric A. So again, we can select a lot of the same options, Fabric A or B, enable failover. We can select our VLANs. We can check our VLANs just like before. I'll set finance to the native VLAN again. Down here, we set the MTU to 9000. We pick our MAC address pool, CBTA, QoS policy. A lot of these policies are the exact same that we just configured on the vNIC itself. And so let's just click OK here. We've successfully created a template. Now when we go back to our service profile, we say I want to add another vNIC. I can check this box right here that says Use vNIC Template. Let's just give it a name real quick, Ethernet 3. We'll check that box, and we see that all of those options go away because the options are going to be inherited from the template. The main thing I have to do here is pick the template from a dropdown, so I'll pick template A, and we're good to go. I could create an individual adapter policy, but I'm just going to pass on that and say OK. And once again, my vNIC is added to the list. I simply have to save changes, ignore the errors because it's a lab environment, and we are good to go. Now lastly, if I wanted to configure one of those LAN connectivity policies, once again, I go back to the LAN tab, I scroll down, we have LAN connectivity policy here. I would create one, and we see here, this is where I can create all of the different vNICs. I click Add here, I create a vNIC, I can leverage a template if I so choose. Once I've created all of the different vNICs that I want for LAN connectivity policy, then I come back to my service profile, and rather than configuring anything down here, I select my LAN connectivity policy from this dropdown. Once I select my LAN connectivity policy, it's going to automatically populate all of this with all of the vNICs that were configured as part of the LAN connectivity policy. And that is how I can streamline my deployment across many different servers within UCS Manager. I hope this has been informative for you. I'd like to thank you for viewing.